We started yesterday's video by saying, hey, there might be some big recruiting news coming out of yesterday. Actually, we started yesterday's video by me checking my hair, doing a little intro, and then sitting here staring at the screen like a goober for a minute or so, and then talking again, because it turns out that I didn't actually edit yesterday's video. I didn't cut out the little intro before I start talking. I didn't insert the music. I just messed. I didn't clip the end, so you got to see me like putting my computer away and everything. It was real professional stuff, let me tell you. Now, we've been doing these Morning Pitt videos for a couple years now, so I guess I'm entitled to screw it up every now and then, but I apologize for the completely unprofessional display that you got yesterday. So I'll give you some lasers just to make up for it, huh? Now, aren't you happy you got some lasers out of it? And you know what? Those are the commitment lasers. And we should do it 3 times because Pitt got not 1, not 2, but 3 commitments out of yesterday. There were 3 top targets who were announcing their commitments yesterday, and every single one of them went for Pitt. It was a good day on the recruiting trail for the Panthers, to be sure. These are good prospects. They're good additions to the class. And, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Let's break down the newest commitments, who they are, how they fit in. Cue the music on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You missed the music, didn't you? You missed it. Admit it. You usually hate the music, but yesterday you missed the music because instead of the music, it was just me sitting like this. Right? And that's way more boring and far less interesting than the music. So you might not like the music. You might not want to put it on in your car or something like that, but you missed it yesterday when you didn't have it. You're glad to have it back here on the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, asking you, as always, to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. The subscribe button is right down there in the midst of the .com. Just click that thing and then I can stop asking. But I'm going to keep asking because there's like a majority of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed. So come on, help me out here. And then when you're done, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's where we've had all the info on these recruits leading up to their commitments. We had all the info on them leading up to their official visits. We had the feedback from them and the reactions after their official visits. You know, where they stood between the official visits and the commitments, and when the commitment day was coming. Yesterday, we had the post on the message board. In addition to this video, we had it on the message board. They're like, look, it's looking like Pitt is going to get not 1, not 2, but all 3 of the recruits who were announcing their commitments yesterday, which is ultimately what ended up happening. You had a pretty good idea it was coming if you were on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. It's not just the articles. You don't just read it for the articles. You get on the message boards and interact with other Pitt fans because it's the best online community of Pitt sports fans that you're going to find. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. 3 commitments came. They were scattered throughout the day. One was at 12, one was at 2, and one was at 7 p.m. All 3 guys on the defensive side of the ball. 1 defensive lineman, 2 defensive backs. All 3 guys who took official visits to Pitt this last month, actually. Now, since we're into July, and I want to say 2 out of the 3 were on the same official visit weekend, and 1 was on another. I just want to double check that. I know at least 2 were on the same official visit weekends. 2 were on the second visit weekend. 1 was on the third visit weekend, and they were all high priority guys, and actually they sort of committed in the order of their visits. So let's jump into it. The first commitment of the day came in at noon. Still haven't confirmed how to pronounce his last name, but we're going to call it Gurrier. Josh Gurrier from Florida, a 5'10", 172-pound safety prospect. Came on his official visit June 13th, that 13th through the 15th weekend. He was part of a 3-man group of defensive backs who visited that weekend, along with Sean Lee and Cole Woodson, who we just might be talking about again in a couple minutes as we move through this conversation. But Sean Lee, the cornerback from Harrisburg, committed to Pitt pretty much on his official visit, announced it a few days later. Josh Gurrier, being a safety prospect from Florida, took his official visit. He took another official visit after Pitt. I think he went to Iowa or Iowa State after Pitt. He went to Iowa after Pitt. So he took one more official visit. It's always good to be the final official visit, but it didn't ultimately matter. In this case, Gurrier picked Pitt over Iowa, and Iowa State were really his primary offers. I think he took a South Florida official visit in addition to Iowa and Iowa State official visits plus Pitt. So he took 4 official visits, really kind of saw the options that were out there available to him. The in-state option at USF, a couple of schools in Iowa, and a school at Pitt. I think there's a couple of things to like about that run of official visits with Josh Gurrier, right? Number one, he saw a lot of different places. Somewhere that's relatively close to home in USF, Big 10 and Big 12 options in Iowa and Iowa State, respectively. And certainly the kind of stadium that Iowa has and sort of the scene at Iowa, which is, your classic kind of Big 10 crowd and Big 10 town, a college town that you find throughout the Big 10. And then he went to Pitt. And so one notable thing about his 4 official visits is I think he saw a lot of different types of environments. I mean, urban versus rural-ish, I guess, with Iowa and Iowa State, Pitt and USF being urban. But the other notable thing about obviously seeing multiple conferences. And then the other notable thing is that Pitt wasn't his final official visit. Like we said, you always like to be the last official visit. You want to leave the lasting impression. You want to be the last thing that they think about. When it comes to commitment time, the freshest memory in mind is that most recent official visit. And even though Pitt was only a week before Iowa, they still weren't the most recent official visit. They weren't the final official visit that Josh Gurrier took. That one was to Iowa. And so I think that's notable, that Pitt made such a strong impression on Josh Gurrier that they were able to hold off, even though he took another official visit and went to Iowa a week later. The impression from Pitt, the impact from Pitt was considerable enough that they held on and landed his commitment. Gurrier, like I said, had those offers. Those were sort of his main offers. A 5'10", 172-pound safety prospect. Last season, he scored 5 different touchdowns. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown. He had a pick 6 and also had a punt return for a touchdown. I really get the impression from talking to some different sources that Josh Gurrier where do we have him rated? I know he's a 3-star. He's a 5.7 on the Rivals rating scale, so it actually puts him among the higher-rated prospects in Pitt's recruiting class as a 5.7. Remember, we always talk about the rating scale that you have your stars, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, but then within each of those star rankings, there's this Rivals rating, and it's a range that I think 5.5 to 5.7 is 3-star, 5.8 and 5.9 are 4 stars, and then 6.0 and 6.1 are 5 stars, and it kind of works like that. Below 5.5 would be a 2-star. And so Josh Gurrier, with a couple of other guys in Pitt's recruiting class, is a 5.7 3-star. They're the highest range. They're at the top of the range for 3-star prospects. And so, putting him right on that cusp of a 4-star status. I'm not going to sit here and make promises about Josh Gurrier ending up as a 4-star or anything like that. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because I've made those kinds of predictions in the past and they haven't come to fruition. I think he's really, really good, though. And I think you see a lot of guys like this, and Pitt has had a lot of success with guys like this. Those 3-star prospects ranked 5.6 or 5.7 from Florida, who end up being really good. I mean, a guy like Brandon Hill, you know what I mean, ends up being really, really good with that kind of rating. Pitt is always going to make up the bulk of its recruiting classes and the bulk of its roster out of 3-star prospects. That's just the area where they recruit. The key is finding those 3-star prospects who fit well with what you want to do, and finding those guys who are a good fit for your scheme, those guys that you believe have the natural talents and abilities that you can develop, and the guys who are coachable, who show the traits that you want to see, that you believe you can develop into quality players. I think it's been easier to execute this on the defensive side of the ball because the defensive scheme has remained largely unchanged for 9 years, going on 10 now. I think it's been a little bit tougher to always, on the offense, because you're changing. Well, they changed offenses after 15, 16, 17. They changed offenses after 15, 16, 18, 21, and 23. So how many changes in the offense have there been? Inevitably, when you bring in a new offense, some of the guys who were recruited for the last offense aren't going to pan out. Defense doesn't have that situation because they've been so consistent with the defense year after year after year, and they've been able to find those 3-star defensive players, particularly defensive backs, who fit this defense really well. They stick with it, they grow, they develop, and they become really good players. And it's happened time and time again. And so when you see a guy like Josh Gurrier, and you get the sense, I've had different sources tell me how excited the Pitt staff is about this guy, in particular, him being a really, really good prospect and maybe one of the better safety prospects Pitt has recruited over the years. I think you can feel reasonably confident that they know what they're looking for, that they know what they want, and they've got a pretty good track record of getting it. They've got a pretty good track record of getting the guys that fit and then coaching them into a position where they can excel. And so I think this is a really good commitment. Offer sheet, whatever, stars, whatever. I think this staff knows what they're looking for with defensive backs, and I think they've been really good at getting it and coaching and developing those guys. And I think Josh Gurrier looks really, really good as a fit into that scheme and that type of what they're looking for. I really do. The next commitment that came around 2:00 yesterday, and it was a defensive lineman, Denham Cook, defensive end prospect. We list him as a linebacker, an outside linebacker on the Rivals database. We had him at about 6'4", 215. Up until I think yesterday, we finally got it updated to the weight where he was when he checked in for his Pitt official visit. They always weigh these guys on their official visits. Denham Cook weighed in at 245, so we updated that. Now he looks a little bit more like a defensive end, at least weight wise. I think when you watch his video, you can clearly see that he's a defensive end. But at 6'4", 245-pound defensive end from Bishop Hartley High School in Columbus, Ohio. Picked Pitt over Virginia, Louisville, Indiana were sort of his main Power 5 offers. He had Purdue as well. He took an official visit to Virginia. 2 weeks later, he took an official visit to Pitt. He was intending to take official visits to Indiana and Louisville, but canceled those because Pitt was the school for him. Denham Cook put up some pretty ridiculous numbers last year for Bishop Hartley: 116 tackles, 22 tackles for loss, 15 sacks, 1 interception, and an all-conference first team selection as a result. You watch his film, like I said, we list him as an outside linebacker, and that's what he plays. It looks like they almost play like a, I think most of the film looks like it's like a 4-3, and he just happens to be standing up. So I guess you could call it a 3-4 with that guy standing up on the outside. But Pitt likes him putting his hand in the dirt and rushing off the edge. And certainly they need guys like that. They need guys like that this year. Denham Cook is not going to help them this year, but he could potentially help them next year. Decent group of power conference schools, the kind of schools in Virginia, Louisville, and Indiana, the caliber of schools that you're going to compete against on the field most Saturdays in the fall. So you'd like to, we say this all the time, you'd like to beat those schools for the recruits that they want. If it's a guy that if you and Virginia are going head-to-head for a recruit, or you and Louisville are going head-to-head for a recruit, you want to win those battles because you're probably going to be playing those teams at some point over the next 2 years, 3 years. That recruit that you land is probably going to play against that team 2 or 3 times. And so you'd like to have him because that should give you a better chance at success. Like I say, he's almost exclusively a stand-up defensive end. Julian Anderson, Juju Anderson, the kid from New Jersey who went to Florida for a few years, went to high school in Florida for a few years, and then he's going to do a post-grad year in New Jersey before he joins Pitt in the recruiting class of 2025. It does a lot of the same thing, although, when you compare the two, I think Anderson is listed at 210 or 215. He really looks like he's 210 or 215, whereas Denham Cook is legitimately 245 pounds. He's a big dude. And it was a great story. Hopefully you got a chance to read our article on Panther-Lair.com. When I say it was a great story, I don't necessarily mean the article was great. I hope you like it. I enjoyed writing it. But it was a great story that Denham Cook had where he was a freshman and Pitt started talking to him. Pitt showed recruiting interest in him as a freshman in high school. And so he thought, Pitt's probably going to offer me. This is going to be an offer. And the conversation happened at one point, and Pat Narduzzi was like, well, no, we're not going to offer you. I don't think you're big enough, and I don't think you're fast enough. And so Denham Cook, instead of taking that personally and tweeting about it, about how motivated he is, he just put his head down and went to work. And he got bigger, and he got faster. And in January of this year, Pitt pulled the trigger on an offer. And I think that's such a cool story. I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, you like to see the perseverance work out, pay off. You like to see a kid take constructive criticism, and go with it and be motivated by it, and be driven by it, and really push through to achieve his goals. I think that says a lot about Denham Cook as a person. Obviously, I think it says something about him as a player, that the Pitt coaches were like, actually, wait, you're really good. You can really make plays for us. I think it says a lot, and I think it's a really cool story. And congratulations to Denham Cook on not just committing, but the whole process of getting an offer, the whole process of getting to this point in his recruitment, because he truly did earn it. He worked hard and got to this space. And then the final commitment came yesterday. It was last night. Cole Woodson, safety, 6 foot, about 190 pounds or so. I think is what we list him at. I should have had that. Where is it? You have everything possibly prepared. Yeah, we list him at 6 foot 190. He goes to Battlefield High School in Haymarket, Virginia. Nice recruiting win here for Pitt to beat Virginia and Virginia Tech, in addition to Duke and Syracuse. Top 5 for Cole Woodson basically was those 5 schools, all ACC schools. He also had Wake Forest. He had West Virginia. Offer-wise, he had Minnesota, in addition to those 5 ACC schools, and that's a good win. James Madison in there as well. You may say, oh, James Madison, you should beat James Madison. Yeah, you should. But it's another school in Virginia that could be a challenge, and so to go out and win those battles that's a solid win for Pitt. That's a good win for Pitt. He's a safety prospect. Played a little offense last year, caught 13 passes for 127 yards, scored 4 touchdowns. I mentioned those 4 touchdowns because he ended up being 5th on his team in total touchdowns scored with 7, because he supplemented his 4 receiving touchdowns with 3 pick sixes. He had 4 interceptions and took 3 of them back to the end zone, and ended up being 5th on his team in touchdowns. Played for a really good team at Battlefield. They went 12-1 last year. They were 12-0 leading up to the region championship game, the region final game, and they ended up losing that one. But if you look at their 12 games prior to that, they gave up 6 points in the opener, 14 points in each of the next 2 games, and then over the next 6 games, Battlefield did not lose a point. Did not lose a point. Damn. I wanted to really emphasize that one, and I wanted that line to land, and then I say something stupid like they didn't lose a point. They didn't allow a point. They pitched 6 shutouts in a row. 4 giving up 23, 6, and 18 in the final 3 games leading into that region championship game where they gave up 56. But don't pay attention to that. They had 6 shutouts in a row, and Cole Woodson, a big part of that is a safety. Plays kind of in a variety of spots. Almost all safety. Sometimes he lines up over the slot. Sometimes he's the boundary. Sometimes he's playing like center field. Sometimes he plays like a field safety. I would guess, and I mean, we'll have to talk and see what kind of the word is. I would have to guess that Woodson at his size is probably more of the boundary safety. In Pitt's defense, that Donovan McMillan type of role. Whereas Josh Gurrier is probably more of the field safety. That's my own take on it. The Pitt coaches might sit next to me and slap me in the face and say, "What are you, an idiot?" Of course, Gurrier would be the boundary safety and Woodson would be the field. But that's neither here nor there. They like to train those guys to do both. But Woodson is a big physical player. He's got good size at safety. He's bigger than Gurrier. I think Gurrier shows some speed, but Woodson obviously can make things happen when he's got 3 pick sixes in a season. Another good prospect. Like I say, you're winning recruiting battles against other ACC schools. That's what you want to do. You'd love to win. You'd love to punch above your weight. You'd love to win recruiting battles against that top tier of college football, and occasionally you will. But you need to consistently win. It's just like on the field. You got to consistently beat those teams that are in the same tier as you. And you have to do it in recruiting as well. You have to beat those teams that are in the same tier as you. And the rest of the ACC, most of it is largely in that same tier. A couple teams are above in the highest tier. A couple teams are below in the lowest tier. But most of these teams that we're talking about, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Duke, are more or less in the same tier. There's varying ranges, just like in the rivals ratings. There's different types of 3 stars. There's different levels of schools in that tier. But they're generally in the same tier. And you want to win those battles. And that's what they've done. And I think that's what they've done with all 3 of these guys, with Guerrier, Cook, and Woodson. Is they've won battles against other similarly tiered power conference teams. And that's what you want to do. And I think that's what they've done. I think they got some really good prospects. So 2 more safeties joined the group to go along with Elijah Dotson as another safety prospect, plus Sean Lee as a cornerback prospect. Denham Cook coming in as a defensive end. He's the second defensive end in the class, along with Julian Anderson. They've also got Trevor Summers, who will be a defensive tackle. So that's 3 defensive linemen in this class. That's 4 defensive backs in this class. 5 defensive backs. I forgot about Mason Alexander. 5 defensive backs in this class, plus 3 defensive linemen, filling in the defense quite well. This staff is. Now, we saw earlier in June, there was a big push of offensive skill guys. We did a Morning Pitt episode about that a week or 2 ago. Do they need all these skill guys? Well, I think they did, and I think they're reloading a lot of the defensive positions. And they reloaded a lot of the defensive positions yesterday. So the July 1st recruiting boom. July 1st recruiting boom. No, wait, what's the fireworks? Is it 2 thumbs up? Yeah, there's July 1st recruiting boom. Good production values there. But yeah, it was a good day for Pitt, and I think they got 3 really good defensive prospects who fit their defensive scheme really well. And now they're up to 21 recruits in the class, which is a pretty good place to be on July 1st, or July, by the end of the day on July 1st, which is where they were last night. And I think there's still some guys kind of floating out there, and they might add more. We'll see what happens. But Pitt goes 3 for 3. They hit the triple on Monday. Pretty good day for Pitt. Pretty good recruiting day to pull those guys in. So, yeah, we'll see what tomorrow brings. I don't know if it's going to bring 3 more commitments, but we'll see what tomorrow brings. Either way, I appreciate you watching the Morning Pitt today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then go over to the website, Panther-Lair.com, for all the coverage of Pitt recruiting. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Get your questions in for the mailbag on the message board at Panther-Lair.com, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.